Welcome, everybody, to Fitness Education Webinars. Today, our guest is Karl Sterling. Karl is a NASM master trainer. He is a neurorehabilitation specialist based in Syracuse, New York, the creator of Parkinsons regeneration training and the author of the book, Parkinsons Regeneration Training. Karl specializes in working with clients who have movement disorders such as Parkinson's disease, multiple system atrophy, multiple sclerosis, Charcot-Marie-Tooth's, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, autism, and more. He operates the popular Mindset for Success YouTube interview series and is the founder and president of the Parkinsons Global Project, which is a foundation dedicated to funding education and research and helping people with Parkinson's and other movement disorders. Welcome, Karl.
Hey, thanks, Vince. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again, too. It feels like we keep on meeting like this, right?
I really appreciate the opportunity.
I'm
always,
to have you here.
Studying and learning more pretty much every day, but so much I need to learn.
I know there's always more to learn. I've forgotten more than I know now. Right? Keeps on going in one ear and out the other. So Karl, could you let us know how did you, I know we've talked about our musical and performance backgrounds before, but how did you get into fitness?
Okay, the abbreviated version is when I was 48, so that's 12 years ago, I went to the doctor for a physical, and he's really good to me, like a friend, and he took time and listened. And but he also scared me really bad because I was, I was in the upper 200s, pushing 300 pounds. I was obese, very obese. Had a lot of health problems. I'll just say that, a lot of pretty serious health problems. And he gave me a very stern and kind lecture to get my act together. Otherwise, who knows what would happen. So I was so frightened. I called a trainer who I knew, and I started working with him literally the next day. A year later, I was 70 pounds lighter, and I thought, geez, I'm tired of being a musician for a living. I really wanted to change careers. Maybe I can help people. And actually, it was before the year. It was about 6 months in. I looked around, and I just, at the suggestion of Brent Brookbush, who's a friend of mine, a very close friend, Dr. Brookbush, he said, do NASM. So I did. And that started the journey. Awesome. That's how I got into fitness. Yeah, that's the first part of the story.
Mm-hmm. And what sort of, before you got into the Parkinson's and this specialized area, what sort of stuff were you doing in fitness? Were you working for yourself, or did you work at a commercial gym, or what was that experience like?
Really scary, because after I got certified, I didn't see anybody for 6 months because I was scared to death. I actually didn't really think that I knew what to do because there's no practical application with that certification. I'm not saying it's not a good certification, but what I will say is once you get on hands-on, you know how it is. I mean, do you remember your first client? I mean, I was scared. I actually called and canceled. And then she never came to see me. So I got another client who became my first, and I couldn't cancel because I knew I'd never get started. I'm going off on a tangent, but I worked at a gym not far from where I am right now, about a mile away, called Pine Grove Health and Country Club. I was already a member there for probably 20 years. And Will, the owner, said, yeah, you're NASM, come on in. So primarily, I was working the weight loss arena. That's what most people were interested in. That was fine for me because I'd lost a lot of weight. So I understood how to change my diet, because I also had a dietitian who was a good one. Nothing against anybody, any profession, but they all have their good and they're not so good. This person was great. So when I combined eating well with training and moving, and it went really well. So I started working weight loss. I stayed there maybe 2 years, and then in 2 years, so let's see, I'm trying to think. It was 2011. So it's 10 years ago. My time frame is not quite lining up, but these are approximate time frames. I went back to school at Syracuse University thinking I would, well, I went through the nutrition program thinking I would add that as something I could offer. Because you know how it is, if we combine healthy, the right eating for our goals and our health, along with training and movement and all those parts of, you know, fitness, well, we can really make a lot of progress. And so I went back to school. I also got hired to work there. So I worked there for about 2.5 years as I went through the program training people there. So my whole life was on campus other than going home at night.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
That's where I met Jerry Evensky, who was my economics teacher 9 years ago. He had Parkinson's, and that began the journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was what I was going to ask next, is how you started working with Parkinson's clients, and what was it? Because, you know, we have, you know, you have one client who has a shoulder replacement, you have one client who has a knee replacement, and, you know, it's interesting and you work with them, but what was it that attracted you to this particular group or this particular demographic, and what also aligned to make that your specialty?
It just organically developed based on my personality, which is like this. Whether it's good or bad, I always want to go outside the comfort zone. Now, these days, I go in a good ways outside the comfort zone. It was the unknown about what's going on in the brain and in the nervous systems. I wanted to learn more. And the more I got into it, the more fascinating it became. And to this day, as a matter of fact, right now, it's more fascinating to me than it ever has been, because there's so much to know, learn, and try. It's kind of like every session is like an experiment. Of course, it's based on your experience and your results you've seen with other people, but it's also individualized for the person based on what their challenges are and their symptoms, let's say. So it, you know, I mean, that's, for me, this is out of my comfort zone every day to some degree, although I'm comfortable enough to try something that's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But safe. I mean, we have to be safe and sensible. We can't just go and do crazy stuff. There needs to be some logic behind it. But it's funny because actually at the same time, because I've always wanted to learn more, I think it's 8 years ago or 9, I can't remember, I started an interview series, completely self-indulgent, I will admit. I just wanted to learn more. So I interviewed Brent first because I knew him really well. And because I can't call up, you know, anybody necessarily and say, hey, you want to go have coffee so I can pick your brain and you teach me stuff.
Right. But if you
That's how,
say
well,
I have a podcast or a webinar, then it sounds official.
yeah. So if you go to, like, I can't remember the link. If you just search Karl Sterling podcast on, you know, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, it'll go to the playlist, like 161 interviews or something like that. You go back to the first ones. I mean, the audio and the video is such terrible quality, but the information is there.
Mm-hmm.
I got names, you know, I sent Brent, just give me 2 names before I leave. So give me Emily Splickle and Perry Nicholson. They were next on the list, but you were one of the first people, and yours was different because you and Jordan Chambron, she was your model, and you did this beautiful thing on assessments in a noisy gym with my crappy equipment. But you know what? That's one of my favorites because of the way you presented that, concise. So we met, it's got to be 8 years ago at least.
Easily, yeah, back at Swedish Institute.
Maybe 9 years. And I would go to New York almost every Wednesday and meet somebody and interview them because it was doable. You know, I'm 4 hours away, or I fly down if I get a cheap flight. But that was just a simultaneous, you know, go to college, no classes on Wednesdays, took Wednesdays off, went to New York most weeks. Well, I put a lot of money into it too. So I was really investing in what I felt was not only myself, but even more so my 110% commitment to learning so I can do a better job with my people. And what I find is interesting, I really try to be careful how I say this, is I feel that it's important to be mindful that there are a lot of, multifaceted here, a lot of crappy personal trainer certifications that some people have, yet they're great at their job because they continue studying and learning, and they might have the worst one out there, and I don't even know what that is. But I was at dinner with Perry Nicholson 3-4 years ago in Denver, and we started Googling and counting. When we got to 50 certification agencies, we stopped counting and said, oh, this is crazy. But then you have some of the premier certifying agencies with mediocre or not so good trainers. Well, maybe they're not into it, they don't study, they don't care, I don't know, I'm not judging. But that's the same thing though with the medical community. Neurologists, there's a couple here in my city, I think they should be banned from practicing, and I'm totally serious. They're misdiagnosing people left and right. But regardless of that, people need help, and I want to look at the most comprehensive, holistic possible way to intervene with strategies and techniques that help to, let's say, reduce fall risk, improve movement, memory, cognition, reaction time, hand-eye coordination, quality of life. And so it's an always ongoing learning experience every single day, literally every day.
That's awesome. It's a great approach to life, to taking it one day at a time, and really trying to. We have a saying around New York Sports Club now, which is be better today than you were yesterday, and be better tomorrow than you are today. And that's, very, very much something to strive for. So I'd love to take some time for you to go into some of the slides so you can show us what's happening with the Parkinson's regeneration training course and book and how that fits in. And then, of course, I've got some other follow-up questions for you, but let's take a look at
oh, sure, I'd love to.
where this falls and what your focus is now.
Sure. And before I share, I just want to say that I've learned as much from my clients, my workshop attendees, their caregivers, other professionals, as I have from anybody else. In fact, I think that, a good, very, very dear friend of mine is on right now, Laura. Hola, Laura. Bienvenido.
Hi, Laura.
I owe her a phone call. And I've been so unbelievably busy in this new clinic I opened. I barely have time for anything. But I'm grateful. So I'm getting it under control. I have a physical therapist going to start working with me next week, and another assistant. So we'll really be able to offer a lot. But I've learned so much from, let's say, Laura, Russ Parker, Omatola Thomas, Gavin Morgan. I mean, these are names out there that a lot of people won't know. But if you're in the Parkinson's world, they all live with Parkinson's. You're going to know them because these people are fighters, man. And what I've learned is that attitude and commitment of being better than yesterday, fighting back against the diagnosis, comes from people like Laura, Ross, and them. And sometimes what it takes is for someone to, I'll get into the slides in just a second, but I've had literally in front of my very eyes, people come in and, they're at a workshop, I don't want to listen to this guy. And because they've heard it all, they think, and it's not my ego. I'm just saying, I don't teach stuff the way other people do. I don't look at things the way most other people do. You're an exception because you're like one of the greatest out there, Vince. But
you're so kind. I paid him to say that.
Yeah, I bought a new piece of equipment. No, just kidding. No, you're one of the exceptions out there. But the emotional part of things is also a really big deal, because when you give somebody one technique that allows them, let's say, to roll over for the first time in 5 years by themselves, unassisted, that can take maybe potentially from feeling hopeless and defeated to unstoppable and optimistic. So There's a lot of power in that. So let's take a look at some slides here. All right. I'm sorry, I can't remember where it is.
You should have a share screen at the bottom.
Yeah. I thought I had my program open. Just one second. Oops. Well, why don't we go to pardon me for just a minute. I'll get this up. I just evidently closed it by accident. I'm going to show you just a few slides from I'm so sorry. Here it is. Okay, here it is. I evidently closed it by accident.
And we tested this all before we started.
Yeah, it worked. It's just that I don't always work. Okay, here we go. Let's view from. I'm going to take you through the whole thing, but we're going to blast like super fast. You can see that okay?
Yep.
All right, so this is the name of the program. My disclaimers are this. What I come up with is a lot of it's based on research, but not everything. Because if we don't look outside the box, we can actually, as Dr. Steve Capobianco says, medical director at Rock Tape, a really good friend. He's the one who suggested I write a book in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a year to realize he was actually serious. That was like 5 years ago. Is you got to be looking outside the box, be sensible, be safe. But if you do the stuff you always do, you won't get different results. So not everything I do is based on research. There's a lot of experimentation, but be safe. All right. So the job that I'm looking to, let's say, accomplish is filling the gap. That arrow, double-ended arrow in the middle represents a gap. It's a gap in knowledge. And so we have on the left our current level of knowledge for those communities. And then we have on the right more knowledge. So we're going to fill that gap with some knowledge. With all these things, we want to slow disease progression, live a full and active life, reduce fall risk, improve, movement, cognition, memory, and all that. Maybe even for those genetically predisposed, you want to delay disease onset, because there's research to show that if you are genetically predisposed to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other disorders, what we do may help to delay the onset. So in particular with Parkinson's, we're most concerned about falls, because unfortunately, the number one cause of mortality in the Parkinson's population are not the fall necessarily, but complications. Mm-hmm. Just one example, person falls backwards, knocks the back of their head, backwards is usually the worst kind of falls. They get a concussion, they go to the hospital. True story of a gentleman, I never knew him personally, but neurologist, Dr. Alfonso Fasano in Toronto says, the guy comes in, he's in the emergency room, he's got a concussion, he has Parkinson's, he lost his balance, he fell down, hit his head. A month later, he died. Pneumonia. So it wasn't the fall, it was complications. But statistically, breathing issues are number 2 cause of mortality in Parkinson's. Because, your chest muscles, if they're rigidity, and then there's dopamine. We'll talk about dopamine in a minute. In fact, let's save that for that. So one of the things we know, if we look at the work of Dr. John Rady, who's a best-selling author and actually has become, I won't say a friend, but definitely an acquaintance who I'm communicating with fairly often. Teaches at Harvard. He wrote a really great best-selling book called Spark. Another one's called Go Wild. And his new one just came out in January this year, ADHD 2.0, which is the sequel to a 25-year-old book called Driven to Distraction. Well, that would be me. If we combine the following things in any format, or maybe even all of them together, we're going to stimulate so much brain activity, because movement, just the act of getting up and walking, actually creates brain activity and synaptic firing patterns. Okay. If we gamify, so we move over here on the right, we're moving, whatever it is we're doing, walking, running, whatever. And we gamify it outdoors with another person. And maybe if we're comfortable in our surroundings and what's under our feet, take our shoes and socks off, because this is a big area of barefoot stimulation is a huge benefit in waking up those plantar skin mechanoreceptors and sensory receptors, or let's say these small nerves, that it's the most sensory nerve dense skin on the body, plantar skin, bottom of the feet. A lot of those go dormant wearing shoes and socks for decades. Well, Rady says it, Dr. Emily Splickle says it. I used to travel all over the US and England. I taught for her there too. And teaching the barefoot training specialist course. You haven't taken, I recommend taking it. It's an awesome course. But Rady talks about it in the book Go Wild, about the benefits to waking up those nerves, which immediately shoot through central nervous system via peripheral nervous system to the brain. Like, I don't know if it's speed of light, but it's like an immediate thing of more proprioceptive or sensory input. So you get more brain activity, more information, and then the brain responds immediately by sending out a signal to help you move better, stabilize better. So if we can go barefoot outdoors, be moving and gamifying it, we have so much great stuff going on. The other thing about outdoors and barefoot, if anyone's ever heard of grounding, well, if you're connected with the earth directly, bare feet, you're grounding negative ions, good for the immune system. And actually, there's actually new stuff. It's not in my program yet because I have to write it, but Stanford is coming out with some really, really cool stuff on the power of vision in relation to brain activity and overall health. I won't go into more now because I wouldn't be able to articulate well, but being able to look, if somebody's closed in an area all the time, they're in a big city, one of the best things they can do is take the elevator up to the tallest building they can find and stand there for a few minutes and look out on the horizon every day. Because actually, that's a thing for your brain to be able to see far away versus just a few blocks away all the time. But that's another subject. Let's talk about brain circuitry. I don't know if I'm just going to move forward because I don't think I have these slides in here. Okay. Well, I don't have the slides in this program, but just know that in Parkinson's, you have an area of the brain called substantia nigra where dopamine is produced. Well, it's produced in a lot of places in your body, in your brain, but it's a big production center, and the substantia nigra is inside the basal ganglia. It's like maybe the size of a walnut, I think they say. It's a butterfly shaped, 2 lobes. And when those brain cells, as they die off, less dopamine is produced. Well, dopamine does a lot of stuff. I mean, it's a driver. It'll drive you towards a goal. It'll drive you towards a person. It'll drive you towards an award. It'll drive you towards getting that cup of coffee you want. It's a driver. It can be a drive for addiction too. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff about addiction and how dopamine plays a role. But it's also a neurotransmitter where your brain, through dopamine, tells your body what to do. All right. And if you don't have enough dopamine, this neurotransmitter, then movement may be impaired. Okay. Like you want to take a step and you know you want to take the step, but you're frozen. Not enough dopamine. So it takes a little longer for you to get going. It may take you longer to stop. It can play all kinds of coordination role problems, movement problems. So as this, they have dopamine replacements, and we know that if we exercise, that's good, especially cardio, because the elevated heart rate, I just remembered I have this slide later. I'll save that. Exercise will be a crucial thing, we'll find out, in creating and lighting up dopaminergic pathways, basically creating kind of more dopamine. But also there are circuits outside of the substantia nigra, like the nigrostriatal connection between those parts of the brain, where the dopamine pathways are interrupted. It would be like going on a highway with several bridges, but the bridges are out. So most of the highway, like 90% of the highways there, or 99%, but every time there's a bridge, there's not a bridge anymore. So you can't keep going or you crash. Well, this would be like what the dopamine pathways are looking like. They're interrupted. So the signal's not working right. Well, this means we want to take advantage of, let's say, neuroplasticity down here on the bottom. There's a lot of stuff I'm not going to tell you about this. I'll be talking for 3 hours. Neuroplasticity means we have the ability, the brain has the ability to create new neural firing patterns so that it can adapt and help us to do the things we want to do better through new pathways. Let's use just one example. Oh, I'm learning Spanish. I'm getting pretty good at it, right, Laura? She knows I'm getting pretty good at it. We were in Mexico together about 4 months ago teaching a workshop. But anyways, riding a bike. Pretty much everyone's ridden a bike, right? So were you good at it the first day? No. So you practice, and all these synaptical firing patterns here, like these little blips here of white light, those are supposed to represent electrical synapses between neurons. And then the more they fire up, the more they connect those neurons. And basically it's like this. Frequent and repetitive training to develop a new skill or ability causes the formation of new synaptic firing patterns between neurons in the brain. Through this regular training, these neural firing patterns are reinforced, and the more solid the connections between the neurons, the better we can perform these skills. So I'm speaking Spanish, at least by text, every day. Conversations probably once a week, at least in Spanish. When I'm in Mexico 3 times this year for a few days at a time, I'm immersed in it. My Spanish is getting pretty good. So, but it's the formation of new patterns to give me a new skill. This is how it works for us. So if we have compromised movement, we want to retrain the brain so we can regain the ability to move, reduce fall risk, improve cognition, improve memory. And it all comes through neuroplasticity, practice. Because the brain automatically outsources. We don't have to tell it what to do. It'll just do what it does. They think probably the cerebellum picks up most of the slack, but there's other areas too. But there's something I want to go over here. It came out of Stanford recently. It's really, really important. You can actually choose to optimize neuroplastic potential, or you can maximize this potential. I got a typo in there. Anyways, and here's how it is. Okay, when we're young, like under the age of 25, I have 2 granddaughters. One's going to be 5 months tomorrow. The other one's 10 months. Like my son and my daughter have daughters. So, you know, kids like learn stuff. Like I saw Eliza laugh for the first time yesterday. I'm like, who taught her how to do that? Nobody. I don't know. But she laughed. And it was like the most heartwarming, beautiful thing ever. Such a great laugh. And, but kids start, children, they start to learn to talk. They start to learn just different things by mere exposure to whatever it is. Okay. So exposure alone can prompt the creation of new neural circuitry. Adult brains, though, are less plastic. Okay. So there's a term coined by Dr. Andrew Huberman from Stanford, the Huberman Lab. Just an amazing, like genius type of guy who's easy to understand. He coined a term called self-directed adaptive plasticity. So we direct changes in our brain by implementing 2 primary steps. Remember, this is a choice. Number 1, focus. And just to prove that you can direct your attention, I'm going to ask you right now something you're probably not thinking about at all. And as soon as I ask, you're going to start thinking about it. How do your feet feel connected to whatever they're connected to? The ground, the floor? How do they feel inside your shoes or whatever you're wearing? And if you're not wearing shoes, how do they feel not wearing shoes? Was anybody thinking about their feet before I said that? No, but now you are. So now you can actually think about how your feet feel because you focused on it. So short bouts of extreme focus combined with deliberate effort will help us to learn something. So maybe it's a skill where we're trying to do some reactive training. I got these lights that blink, I can see, right hand red, left hand green, or whatever. I do a million different things. There's a million things. Focus, focus, focus. 1 minute rounds. Some people are doing 2 minute rounds. Some people are doing 3 minute rounds. The one person does a 30-second round and then they're done, but they're focusing. And all of them are getting better to some degree. It varies between people based on a lot of things. Why? Well, I'll give you the geek side. It's only a couple sentences. During focus, during effort, deliberate effort, extreme focus, have you ever felt strain, like discomfort, like, oh, I can't wait to get done reading this chapter of biology because I don't like biology? That was me. I love chemistry and physics, not biology, although it is interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of ironic. I think it would be the other way,
I
based on
know.
the direction
I
you've
love
gone.
the human body and all that, but biology, they're talking about all this stuff. And I said, oh God, please. So it took so much effort. I was feeling so strained. Actually, I got tired just sitting there reading. I was ready to go to sleep. That's because noradrenaline is released during these periods of focus. And during this focused effort, there's another thing that's happening though too. Acetylcholine is released at the synapses involved of whatever it is you're focusing on or trying to learn. Well, why is that important? Because this is a two-step process for neuroplasticity. Step one is extreme focus, so that you know that you're working when you feel that strain. You've got noradrenaline being released, but you also unknowingly, because you don't feel acetylcholine, marking the neurons for strengthening for step two, which is where the neurons are, the connections are actually developed, which step two will go over in a minute. But one way for a lot of people to get past this effort thing, like I look past it, I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to get through this program. If I just pass biology, which I barely passed, but I attach a reward to the effort, knowing that this is me getting better. This is me going towards a goal. And that's the only way I could get through some of the stuff. Step two is sleep, or a sleep-like state. Sleep is the best, because this is when the neural pathways are formed and strengthened most. That acetylcholine that marks the neurons for strengthening, well, it's there. And then when you sleep, that's when the pathways are like, doesn't mean it happens overnight though. I mean, you might have to be a week, a few days, 2 weeks, and then I've had this happen. I don't know about you. Study, work, practice. And all of a sudden, one day, 4 days later, 2 weeks later, I wake up. It's like, I got it. It finally worked.
So, Karl, on the first slide, you have the word chunking in parentheses, or after the forward slash. So how are they defining the word chunking? I know that term in terms of memorizing. So instead of memorizing 3 things, 2, 1, 2, you memorize 2, 12, and that's one thing, right? So it's that word to me has this sort of memory chunk kind of idea. But how are they using it here?
Good question. I'm glad you brought it up. That would be, I'll take like a chunk of information. Let's say it's, for me, a chunk might be, it depends on what it is I'm doing. Some of these research articles are vocabulary intense. And for me, chunking might be understanding one paragraph. Instead of doing like all 10 pages, I'm going to chunk it, take one chunk of a paragraph or whatever it is I think I can handle, get that in my brain before I move on. I gain a good understanding of that. That would be how they're referring to chunking.
So, and then could it all, when you're talking, you were talking about the reaction pads and targets. So would you also think of it then as sort of the length of the interval? Like we're going to do
100%.
30 seconds of target pads and that's your chunk, but then
Yeah,
you
that's
repeat
it.
those chunks, or over time your chunks get longer. They become a minute or 2 minutes.
Exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly it. Yep. Exactly it. So step one, step two, sleep. And I'd be a multimillionaire if I got paid to sleep. I'm really good at it and I love it. So what we want to do also is, so this involves chunking too, is we want to train movement and so motor skills, let's say, and the brain at the same time, but we want to be using it in different ways. For example, maybe it's so I'm just going to show you a picture if you don't mind. I opened this new center last month and you can see,
Looks
yeah,
great.
the table's in the way, but like way over, I have one of those Alpha Champs lateral rebound trampolines. I put reactive training lights on those sometimes. Got the punching bags and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Down there, that blue thing with the white inserts are letters. So I can have people making words and then moving on it certain ways. Maybe it's all just their feet. Maybe they're jumping. Maybe it's only using like the right knee and the left elbow or something, whatever their abilities are. You can't do everything with everyone. What else we got? We have a power plate coming in next week. I'm real excited about the power plate because vibration therapy is huge. Also have a lot of just games, kids games. Dance Dance Revolution mat out there. It's the cheap version, but I mean, music, reaction training. There's also the memory, like Simon, the Merlin game for feet. So you get them moving and remembering sequences. But let me go through these real quick. They're last I knew, and I know this is not the actual situation, but last I knew there are 13 types of memory. That's before I started counting. And they all fall under like a cognitive domain of sorts. And there's a lot of overlapping too between cognition and memory and memory and memory and memory and cognition. So, but if we just take some of the basic ones, we could train while we're doing some tasks. Maybe it's I have these hurdles, and I have some people who can go like, let's say lateral movement, so sideways, but they're stepping over the hurdle, cross body patterns, cross feet patterns. Maybe it's not cross feet. It's what they can do, not what they can't. Gentleman yesterday I was with, he's 87 years old, no health problems, just wants to keep sharp and moving well. He'll do the sideways things, a million other things. That's just one example. I play catch with him with a ball, and I don't have it with me here, but it's about the size of a basketball, and it's really light. It has the alphabet on it, and it has numbers 1 through 12. So we can do some math, or we can just pick a subject, like he's going over the things, and I bounce the ball to him. He gets it. Maybe the topic is geography. I get a letter B. Bolivia. Like name a city, state, country, or the weather. We had somebody came up with that the other day. So they get like, G, gale force winds. So, but that's like a multitasking thing. You had hand-eye coordination, cognition. In that case, it's like direct recall because they get the letter and they're going to name something that we have assigned them a subject to name stuff. Spatial awareness, we could be doing multi things, maybe just movement or something else and moving, and then telling me, how do you get from here to your neurologist office? Take me out in the parking lot, get in the car. I go out, I turn right on West Genesee. There's 2 stoplights, and I turn left on Hinsdale Road. I go through the second light and turn right on the highway, and like that. So the cerebellum actually fires differently, you thinking in spatial domain, than it does on recall, right? I could say, what's the capital of Texas? Austin. Spell it. That's all direct recall. Then decision making is a fun one. Like if we have the reactive training lights, I say, okay, I have 8 colors I can assign. And I usually start things off just hitting any light with any hand or foot, because up, but maybe have 3 up, 3 down. So they've got the feet and hands going. So they're moving and they're thinking, but we might want to refine it down and say, okay, right hand red, left hand green, or right side red, left side green. Do 2, 3 rounds and then switch it. Right side green, left side red. And you'll see, and happens to me too, we want to stick with the original plan. The brain wants to shift, so it takes even more focus to get it right. And if they screw up, especially if they realize, that's great, because then they realize, oh, I didn't do it right. That's actually progress. We could do, a lot of times I'll do right side red and orange, left side blue and purple, or something. Then maybe switch them up. So that would be decision making, because you're having to make a decision every time you see a light. What did Karl say? What side do I use?
Right. What are the rules? What's the process?
And another one that's kind of fun. I've been really lucky to travel a lot, especially around Europe. And in London, there's a gym there. Dan Edwards owns it. He's a parkour, just an amazing athlete. But he owns the Parkour Generations there in London, East London, and I've taught there, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 times. And we actually had a Parkour for Parkinsons was the name of the program. It was really cool because this involved like problem solving. For example, if you don't know what parkour is, I won't really explain it, but look it up. Parkour. Just look it up. You'll see some extreme athletes jumping building to building and all kinds of really cool stuff. But it doesn't have to be extreme. It could be as simple as there's an object in front of me that's made of a bunch of pipes. I've got to figure out how to solve the problem. This will use some decision making and spatial, because you have to figure out, am I going to go under it, over it, around it, or through it? You have options. You just pick the way that works for you. Maybe then try it another way next time, and another way the next time if you're able to. And go through all the obstacles. I kind of like to get some here, but I'm starting to fill this place up. But so those are like just things we can do that involve thinking. I do a lot of memory stuff too. I might say in the beginning of a session, hey, here's 3 words. Green cucumber pickle. Repeat it back. Okay, good, you got it. 5 minutes later, hey, what are those 3 words again? Green pickle. What are pickles made out of? Oh, cucumbers. That's called priming memory, by the way. You give them a clue, you're priming them. So then we'll add more words. I have a couple of people up to 18 words now, 6 lists of 3. I might say yellow. Which list does it come from? Oh, that's the second list. It's really a lot of neurology places, if they're good at doing testing, they will include tests like this, memory. It can be an assessment. It can be and in my case, it's an exercise. But these are just other examples. I mean, if anyone wants this, I'll be happy to send it to them. Do you mind if I go over one other thing? There's just one other thing right now.
Go ahead.
The primary important thing for all humans, because we all have nervous systems, we all have a brain, we all have dopamine, and we all have the same chemistry, pretty much. The best known method of slowing disease progression, I'm speaking about Parkinson's, but this actually also happens to fall into Alzheimer's as well, and possibly dementia, is exercise. Via exercise. The best known method of slowing disease progression via exercise is cardio. We'll get to the BDNF in a second. First of all, it doesn't need to be intense. You just need to get up and walk as fast as you can safely for ideally 20 to 30 minutes a day. But there's plenty of other things you can do. You can do shadow boxing seated. Do a minute, take 30 seconds off. Do a minute, maybe switch to something else. But there's so many ways to elevate the heart rate. Just, 20% elevation, maybe. I'm just using that number off the top of my head because it seems to work into a lot of the data, 20, 30% higher. Just enough so that after 20 minutes, we do get this hormone called brain-derived neurotrophic factor that's created. Plus, we get blood and oxygen to the brain, and we all need that, right? It's better for brain health. So we say, what's so good about brain-derived neurotrophic factor? Well, man, there's a ton of stuff. Like, I don't know about you. I've been, if anyone's ever experienced actual clinical depression, I have in the 80s, and I know what it's like, and it ain't no fun. I'm fine now. Everything's totally cool. But I don't usually wake up feeling excited about life. It only takes me like 10 minutes to get there, though. I just get moving, take the dog out, walk around, just do stuff, because movement can help to lessen depression because you have neural activity, which is increased. Okay. So in an active state, instead of just sitting a lot, especially first thing in the day, it's a great way to start your day. As long as you're safe doing it, I always emphasize safety. Get moving, do something for 5 minutes. I don't know, run in place, walk around, move, because that will help to generate this. Well, there should be some dopamine. There's some serotonin that'll happen, but brain-derived neurotrophic factor will start to be created, especially after actual exercise like cardio. Although when I lift weights, and I've been lifting a lot lately, I mean, I'm cranking it out and my heart rate goes up. So I'm probably getting it there too, because we need oxygen for our muscles. So it needs more blood. So you have to breathe more, and then the heart rate goes up. So as we look at this, we know that brain-derived, or BDNF, it helps to keep certain chemicals in the system longer. For example, medications, dopamine replacements like Sinemet, levodopa, carbidopa, they oftentimes create what we call an on period of movement for people with Parkinson's and some other movement disorders. So if they're exercising on a regular basis, it doesn't have to be at the moment of the pills, but if they just raise their metabolism some by exercising every day, then the BDNF actually helps the uptake of medications and get into the system sooner and have a longer lasting effect. We also know that BDNF helps to, sorry, I thought I was, okay, prevent cell death. I'm not saying all cells, but it can help prevent death of some cells because it helps to maintain cellular integrity. It's like a long-term maintenance for brain cells so that diseases don't progress as quickly. And we can't say that we're going to stop a disease, but it's very likely you can slow its progression. And for those, again, who are genetically predisposed, I mean, there's plenty of data out there. Dale Bredesen, best-selling author I met in New York 4 years ago. I'm going to interview again in a couple of weeks. For his new book came out, his third book on Alzheimer's. He says it all. Between optimal nutrition and exercising, we have people with Alzheimer's who are improving their memories. And that's what the third book is about. So it's like a regression in disease. Delayed disease onset for those who are predisposed. I'm actually predisposed to Alzheimer's because it runs in my family pretty heavy on the mom's side. But, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to eat well most of the time, although it is hard to control once in a while. But I've been doing very well. My weight's good. I feel amazing. My energy is super high, and it's a natural high, even though I have coffee. It's only my second cup. And and that's it. I have a book. I wrote a book. Is it okay if I just mention?
Absolutely. Please do.
The book is also, it's probably easier to get it on Amazon. Although if you want to get it from me, I'm happy to sign it for you. It's available in English and in Spanish. The Spanish version has an extra chapter on Parkinson's and nutrition written by Dr. Cynthia Lopez in Monterrey, Mexico. She only works with people with Parkinson's, and she's awesome. Laura knows her. I know her. If you go to the pdbook.com, you'll get it direct from me if you're in the United States, and sign it. Send a copy of my CD as well as a bonus. I got to get you a copy of these things too, Vince.
Right. And for the people who don't know, that CD was a fundraiser that you did, and that's all jazz standards, or what's on it again?
Oh, there, no, you know what it is? It's music chosen by people who live with Parkinson's with a positive message in each song for people who live with Parkinson's. Some of the songs are like Doobie Brothers, Here to Love You, Peter Gabriel's Don't Give Up, um, Happy by Pharrell, but it's a completely different style. There's actually a Justin Bieber song on there, and I can't remember the name of it, but I love how it came out. Actually, Justin's, I kind of changed my opinion about him. I didn't used to like him, but he has some talent. I got to tell you, he's not untalented, like him or not. Um, yeah, and all. Oh, by the way, all proceeds, whether you get the book through me at thepdbook.com or through Amazon, 100% of the revenues, other than what covers the cost of publishing, goes to my nonprofit Parkinson's Global Project, and we donate a lot of money every month to individuals with Parkinson's in need. Many in Mexico, a few here, Uganda, Poland, and most recently in Argentina. And it's because I've been to places where people live in houses with dirt floors, and they have an empty fridge with 3 kids, and they can't work maybe because they have Parkinson's and severe dyskinesia. And the husband, in this case, I'm thinking of this one lady who we love, earns about the equivalent of $60 a week. Well, in Mexico, that's 1,200 pesos. That's just not enough to live on. And she can't get medications if we don't send her money. Well, we also know that she uses it the right way, because people we vet them heavily, and we've never been burned. Everybody is using the money the way they're supposed to, but your money goes there, and you can change a life with one book. Profit of one book has the potential of buying medication for somebody for 1 month in most cases.
That's great.
Levodopa. So in this case, this lady was able to move and walk within 3 days of getting her medication 16 months ago when we started supporting her. She couldn't walk before that usually. Well, now she can. So it's my mission to create a win-win-win, help people, educate, be a geek, learn every day.
Cool. A couple follow-up questions, Karl. So usually I ask, what have you seen that's changed in the fitness industry since when you started and now? However, because you've traveled so much and you've been, to the UK and South America and all these other places, I'm curious, what do you find are the 1 or 2 biggest differences between how the US approaches fitness and how the other countries, or any specific other country you've been to, is approaching fitness?
Good question. I love that question. I'm very passionate about my answer. I'm just going to preface this by saying, please realize there are great trainers and movement specialists and physical therapists and occupational therapists and doctors and neurologists here in this country in the United States. Great ones like yourself. However, first time I went to Europe 6 years ago, I thought, holy crap, man, I don't even belong here. It's like these people, they know so much stuff. I mean, they just know, like, if I didn't have a niche to teach, I had no business being there. But I also have been there, God, I don't know, maybe 20 times altogether, different countries. And I have learned so much because, I really, honestly, I don't mean this against, NASM or, ACSM or anybody, because there's great people there and there's some great information. But in my opinion, if I was going to offer a certifying program for personal trainer, I would ramp up the bar so high where you'd have to have practical application experience under a mentor, because that's what they do in Europe. I mean, it's like $5,000 to get certified. And after you go through the program, which probably take at least a year, it's 1 year with a mentor before you're one-on-one. I'm telling you, man, their approach, their holistic approach, and I say holistic, I don't mean like, granola bars and all that. I'm talking looking at all the systems. You get musculo, skeletal, nervous, many nervous systems. Well, you know this. You were at the Swedish Institute. I mean, they're based on it, right, in Europe. So I mean, you've adopted so many of these things in what you teach that you'll get this completely. There is such a more comprehensive approach to a whole body treatment. You know, your visual system, the power of vision, your audio, your vestibular, your lymphatic system, your limbic system. If you're depressed or sad or angry, you're not going to be that strong as if you were happy and feeling good and not depressed. There's a test to prove it. It came out of Germany, and I can't remember the test, but I do it at all the workshops, and it's at 100% of the time people are stronger and move better when they feel better, which actually goes into self-directed attention, if you will, as to where we put our thoughts. Now, that's easier said than done a lot of times, but the bottom line is there's a huge difference between Europe and actually Mexico. A lot of people are surprised by that. Mexico trainers, but there's more physios there than trainers. But the physios there, same thing in Europe with the physios, generally speaking. They're looking at it like, so Mexico has adopted the European system. And so when I go to Mexico, when I go to Europe, I'm learning a ton of stuff. And that's the biggest difference I see, is that I feel, I'm sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings, but I really feel that I got to plug this in or I'm going to lose you. I forgot to plug it in, even though I plugged it in. I didn't plug this end in. I feel that the standards, generally speaking, of most trainers here aren't intentionally low. Like, I'll get some crappy certification and you were easy, it's 4 hours online, it's $89 or whatever, because they're out there. And you could be a great trainer if you keep learning. But standards are very low. It's, for some people, that's what they want, because then they go in with a chip on their shoulder. Hey, you know, I'm a personal trainer. You better be wanting to help people, or you have no business being in this, because I'm not here to impress anybody. You know, I'm still 15, 20 pounds overweight, but I lost 70 pounds. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So that's actually a sort of a good segue, looking at those differences. The other thing, we talk a lot in this country, and typically the idiom or the way we say it is the mind-body connection. We always talk about mind first and then body. But it seems to me that a lot of the work you do, and a lot of what I really like about the work you do, is it's very much about how the body is affecting the mind.
Oh, it's huge.
Right.
And Vince, hold on 1 second. I'll be right with you. Ilka? Okay, I'll be off in like 2-3 minutes. All right. Yeah, have a seat. Absolutely. It's absolutely huge.
Now, what
I mean, that's another talk in itself. It's just that I think
my
that
question, Karl, let me sort of frame this a little more for you. So, you know, you're working with clients who have a specific neurological disorder most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. So they kind of see how, okay, thinking about directions while I'm bouncing a ball and doing these kind of things, they can see how that's appropriate. But when you look at, you know, somebody who's 20, 30, maybe middle-aged, and they're like, yeah, I want to do cardio and I want to lift, how do you think we can explain to them the benefits of doing exercises that are more cognitively or neurologically stimulating? Not to totally change their program, but how might you incorporate some of those things? Or have you dealt with that at all?
yeah. When I was at the university, I was working with a lot of, well, again, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I stopped working with undergrads completely. So I work with grad students though, and administrators and staff and faculty and whatever. Mainly because they'd show up on time. That was the main thing that bugged me. And they weren't out partying Thursday through Sunday. I had some great undergrads though too. over time. I'm 60 years old. They're 22, 23, 24, 25. When I was their age, I thought I was invincible. And then I woke up in Singapore with blood clots, pronounced dead at one point. Well, I'm not invincible. That was 2 years ago. So I'm very lucky that I have great medical care and I got back here okay. I had a rare condition that I didn't know I had. I think one of the things I try to do, and I only have like 3 people under the age of 50 right now, and the average age I work with currently the past 2 years is about 81, I think I calculated. And that includes a 28-year-old in there, 37-year-old. My oldest is 93. Is I think it's important to know that there's a lot going on the past few decades. Again, a whole nother topic, some very heated discussions about this. I don't have heated discussions, but a lot of people just don't subscribe to the theory that food has changed in the past 40, 50 years. It has. And a lot of the problems we're seeing right now with brain issues has to do with, if you read Dr. Dale Bredesen's The End of Alzheimer's book, it could just as well be the end of Parkinson's, because he'll tell you in the book, he says, and there's other research too, it's not just him, but he's just the most well-known, that Parkinson's, Alzheimer's is going to live in the gut for 10 to 20 years before it goes up the vagus nerve and it lands in the brain. And then it's 2, 3, 4 years before you see a noticeable symptom. So knowing that it's so important to eat well, and we're all going to, hopefully we live long, healthy lives. And if some, God forbid, some other disaster happens and we die of a young age, 30, 40 years old, 50 or whatever, we live to be 60, 70, 80, 90. My goal is to live to be 100 at least. But I need to do the things now that are going to get me there, because I might feel great when I'm 20, 30, eating cheeseburgers and from McDonald's and fries and all this other stuff that I still love it, but I can't eat it. I love all the bad stuff. But it's not going to keep me here. And it's also not going to help my mental function. And I don't want to get a movement disorder. I don't want to lose my memory. So I just use, fortunately, the people I work with who are under like 60, I think is only 3 or 4, they get this and they're like, okay, I get it, but sometimes we just have to get it out of our system when we're young and do the crazy stuff, but hopefully we don't do it for too long and then end up with some kind of crazy problems.
Wonderful. Karl, I know you have some clients waiting for you. So I just want to thank you very much for your time, and we'll post a bunch of links with this, and we hope to have you back shortly.
Well, Vince, it's always a pleasure. I want to have you as a guest on my podcast soon.
Okay.
Because I'm ready to ramp it up again with new equipment and all that. I don't think the microphones are working well today, but when I get it figured out, with a new computer, get you scheduled, because you have so much to offer. And to be a guest of yours is an honor for me. So I really appreciate this a lot.
Thank you, Karl. Everybody, Karl Sterling, Parkinson's regeneration training. We'll talk to you again soon, Karl. Thanks a lot.
Laura. I'll be in touch today, Laura. Thank you. See you later, Vince.
Take care, Karl.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.